Good day, students of NSTP. Okay, today we are going to discuss the Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, namely RA 9165. Okay, it is an act instituting the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, repealing Republic Act number 6425, otherwise known as the Dangerous Drugs Act of 1972, as amended, providing funds therefore and for other purposes. So if you notice, in 1972, we have already RA 6425. But why is RA 6425 repealed and changed to RA 9165? Because there are many provisions there that are not applicable anymore. 6425 enumerated many drugs considered as prohibited, but at present there are many other forms of dangerous drugs which are not specified in 6425. Okay? So this act shall be known as the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. And what is the policy of the state in legislating or enacting RA 9165? It is the policy of the state to safeguard the integrity of its territory and the well-being of its citizenry, particularly the youth, from the harmful effects of dangerous drugs on their physical and mental well-being, and to defend the same against acts or omissions detrimental to their development and preservation. So, in view of the above policy, the state needs to enhance the efficacy of the law against dangerous drugs act, it being one of today's more serious social ills. So drugs is a very serious social ill at present. Okay? So towards this end, the government shall pursue an intensive and unrelenting campaign against the trafficking and use of dangerous drugs and other similar substances through an integrated system of planning, implementation, and enforcement of the anti-drug abuse policies, programs, and projects. The government shall aim to achieve, however, a balance in the National Drug Control Program so that people with legitimate medical needs are not prevented from being treated with adequate amounts of appropriate medications, which include the use of Dangerous Drugs Act. An example for this is marijuana. Marijuana is dangerous, but we have a form which we call the medical marijuana. And medical marijuana is used for people with epilepsy. Okay? That is why if there are legitimate medical needs, we can use these drugs provided they are not abused. Okay? So it is the policy of the state to provide effective mechanisms or measures to reintegrate into society individuals who have fallen victims to drug abuse or dangerous drug dependence through sustainable programs of treatment and rehabilitation. So due to the policy stated in RA 9165, it has become the duty of the state to reintegrate into society those individuals who have become drug addicts so that they will be reintegrated into society. So as a policy, the law does not state that drug addicts will be killed. It states it is the duty of the state to reintegrate those individuals who have fallen victims to drug abuse. Okay? So, we will jail the pusher and the dealer, but we have to rehabilitate the users. Okay? So let's go to the definition of terms. As used in this act, the following terms are defined as: number one, administer. To administer is to introduce any dangerous drug into the body of a person with or without his or her knowledge, either by injection, inhalation, ingestion, or other means, or by committing any act of indispensable assistance. So, pwede nga, hindi ikaw ang nag-take, but you provided indispensable assistance to a person in administering a drug to himself or herself. Okay? Unless it is administered by a duly licensed practitioner or doctor for purpose of medication. Okay? So what do you mean by board? The word board here refers to the Dangerous Drugs Board. Okay? What are centers? Centers are treatment and rehabilitation centers for drug dependents. Okay? What is chemical diversion? Chemical diversion is the sale, distribution, supply, or transport of legitimately imported, in transit, manufactured, or procured controlled precursors and essential chemicals in diluted mixtures or in concentrated form to any person or entity engaged in the manufacture of any dangerous drug, and shall include packaging, repackaging, labeling, relabeling, or concealment of such transaction through fraud, destruction of documents, fraudulent use of permits, misdeclaration, or use of front companies or mail fraud. So what do we mean? In short, what do we mean by chemical diversion? Actually, chemicals that are essential or are considered precursor chemicals in the manufacture of dangerous drugs are, ang word natin is, they are regulated. Okay? They are regulated. So, since they are regulated, you have to report how much did you import or buy, and then for what purpose you are going to use. By the way, sang una, ang ginagamit nga sa manufacture kang Dangerous Drugs Act, ang ginagamit are the same chemicals used in the manufacture of textiles. No? So, if you import chemicals for manufacture of textiles, and then ginpasubrahan mo, actually, makalculate ri ka gobyerno kung gusto honda, sa amura nga volume ka chemical, manandara ko pira ang production mo sa isa ka bulan, compare ang amount of production of textiles and the amount that you imported, pira pa ang nabilin sa stockpile, they will know if you have diverted your chemicals. So, diversion is prohibited. It is punishable by law. Or, nag-divert ka using fraud, or you change your documents, or you use different permits, or you misdeclare, or you use front companies to import precursor or essential chemicals, but they do not, these chemicals did not go to their intended purpose. Okay? Now, so these chemicals that are diverted may be used in clandestine laboratories for the manufacture or the illegal manufacture of any dangerous drugs and or controlled precursor and essential chemicals. Okay? I took up sociology subjects, and my teacher in sociology Actually, they have designed at the time a method by which they can confirm if there is diversion of chemical or not, no? So you can compare the amount used in the manufacture. Kaya mamanandra kung pira ang gingamit mo for manufacture, pira ka goods ang na-manufacture, pira ang wala magamit, kag kung nagsubra ka dyan, laban-laban, may diversion. Now let's go to another term, confirmatory test. It is an analytical test using a device or a tool or equipment with different chemical or physical principle that is more specific, and that test will validate or confirm the result of the screening test. Okay? What do we mean by controlled delivery? It is an investigative technique of allowing an unlawful or suspect consignment of any dangerous drug and or controlled precursor and essential chemical. What do you mean by precursor chemical? These are chemicals that are not used as dangerous drugs themselves. Wala sa na intake. But they are drugs that are used in the manufacture. That's why they are called precursor chemicals. Okay? So it is a technique of allowing an unlawful or suspect consignment of any dangerous drug and or controlled precursor and essential chemical, or consignment of equipment, paraphernalia, or property believed to be derived directly or indirectly from any offense, and to pass into, through, or out of the country under the supervision of an authorized officer, with view to gathering evidence to identify any person involved in any dangerous drugs or related offenses, or to facilitate prosecution of that offense. So, anong control delivery? Actually, gina-encourage dia to, in order to catch, no, and to collect evidence from a suspected persons who are involved in the manufacture or import of dangerous drugs and its precursor chemical. So, controlled. In other words, ang PDEA or the police can what? Can simulate a delivery for the purpose of catching and getting evidence. Okay, next we have controlled precursor and essential chemicals. Okay, these are chemicals listed in tables 1 and 2 of the 1988 UN Convention against illicit traffic in narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. So these are drugs that are not addictive in themselves. They are not considered as an end product for drugs, but they are considered as ingredients for the manufacture of drugs. What do we mean by cultivate or culture? It is an act of knowingly planting, like marijuana, sowing, growing, raising, or permitting the planting, growing, or raising of any plant which is the source of dangerous drug. Example, poppy, opium poppy. Opium poppy is a source of cocaine, heroin, and morphine. And ang poppy can be planted. Okay, pwede man marijuana plant. So if you cultivate, that is also punishable by law. Okay, what do we mean by dangerous drugs? These are drugs that are enumerated in the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs and amended by the 1972 Protocol. Okay? These are listing of drugs. What do we mean by deliver? It is an act of passing knowingly a dangerous drug to another, personally or otherwise, and by any means, with or without consideration. Magambal nga with or without consideration, may bayad o may gin tugro kanimo nga reward. So with or without consideration, either with payment or with reward. You pass it on to another. And the qualification is that it is knowingly. Meaning, it is a felony because there is intent and there is knowledge. Okay? So, pwede nga ginpass mo personally or by other means. Ginpadara mo sa courier. Ginpadara mo by using other means. Okay? Ginhulog mo sa dagat. Tapos puruto na to sa dagat. Okay. Then, what do we mean by den, a dive, or a resort? It is a place, okay, where any dangerous drug and or controlled precursor, an essential chemical is administered, delivered, stored. So, hindi ko nga administered lang. Pwede nga nag-deliver, meaning transit, magambal ko transit, bukanti amorang end destination. Temporary lang, or storage for illegal purposes, distributed, sold, or used in any form. So we call it a drug den, a drug dive, or a drug resort. No? Diyan ang distribution. Delivery, administration, that's where it is sold. No? That is what we call a drug den. What do we mean by the word dispense? Dispense is the act of giving away, selling or distributing medicine or any dangerous drug with or without the use of prescription. Who is a drug dependent? Drug dependence, as based on the World Health Organization definition, is a cluster of physiological, behavioral, and cognitive phenomena of variable intensity in which the use of psychoactive drug takes on a high priority, thereby involving, among others, a strong desire or a strong sense of compulsion to take the substance and the difficulties in controlling substance taking behavior in terms of its onset, termination, or levels of use. So a person is a drug dependent if his system is already craving for that drug in the bloodstream. No? Pag wala na nga drug, kag absent na sa bloodstream na, naga-crave siya to replenish it. Because kung hindi siya ma-replenish, ang matabo is naga-experience siya sang ginatawag withdrawal symptoms. Withdrawal symptoms, this is symptoms that are very traumatic and stressful, and therefore, it motivates him to take the drug again to make him feel a little better. The problem, however, if you keep taking the drugs, may ginatawag ka nga level of tolerance. So, primero, high ikaw, nabuo lang imo discomfort, but as you take it, you need more and higher levels of the drug para mabuo lang imo nga withdrawal symptoms or discomfort. So what is a drug syndicate? A drug syndicate is any organized group of two or more persons. Siyempre, hindi man pwede syndicate kung sara lang. Dapat two or more forming or joining together with the intention of committing any offense prescribed under this act. Okay? Meaning either ma-sell, ma-distribute, ma-manufacture. Okay? This is a drug syndicate. So what is an employee of a den, a dive, or a resort? It is the caretaker, the helper, the watchman, the lookout, or other persons working in the den, the dive, or the resort. He may be employed by the maintainer or the owner or operator where any dangerous drug and or controlled precursor, an essential chemical, is administered, delivered, distributed, sold, or used, with or without compensation in connection with the operation thereof. So any person working in a den, a dive, or a resort is considered an employee. and it is also punishable by law. What is illegal trafficking? It is illegal cultivation, culture. So, ang trafficking halin sa pagtanom, halin sa pagpabuhi, hasta sa pag-process, padto sa pag-deliver, pag-administer or pag-dispense, pagbaligya, pag-trade, pag-transport, pag-distribute, or pag-import or export kang mga chemicals, precursor chemicals, tananran, part 3 kang illegal trafficking. So halin sa puno, halin sa pagbuhat, halin sa pagtanom, hasta sa baligya mo ron to, dyan karan, sakop ra kang ginatawag nga illegal trafficking. What is an instrument? An instrument is anything that is used in or intended to be used in any manner in the commission of illegal drug trafficking or related offenses. So, ang mga bagay nga ginagamit mo sa pag-take illegal drugs, ang mga syringes dyan, ang ginagamit mo for smoking the drugs, panawag karan instrument, okay? Now, let's go to laboratory equipment. A laboratory equipment is a paraphernalia, an apparatus, or a material or appliances when used, intended for use, or designed for use in the manufacture of a dangerous drug and or controlled precursor and essential chemical. Examples, mga reaction vessels, mga purifying equipment, mga fermentor, mga funnel, mga flask, mga heating mantle, mga gas generator, mga centrifuge. Basta tanan nga gamit nga importante sa pag-manufacture ka drug, panawag natin karan laboratory equipments. And what do we mean by manufacture? It is the production, preparation, compounding, processing of any dangerous drug and or controlled precursor or essential chemical. So pwede nga mag-manufacture ka, hindi ka drugs mismo, kundi nag-manufacture ikaw kang ginatawag nga precursor or essential chemical. Tanan siya dapat, pwede ran mahimo mo, basta nga it is regulated. Okay? Either directly or indirectly, or by extraction from substances of natural origin, or independently by means of a chemical synthesis, or by a combination of extraction and chemical synthesis. So it includes packaging or repackaging of such substances, design or configuration of the form, no? So halin sa opium poppy, ginbuhat mo nga cocaine, ginbuhat mo nga heroin, ginbuhat mo nga morphine, tapos ginbuhat mo nga shabu, whatever. That is the process of manufacture. So ang manufacture nag-include kang packaging, repackaging, design, configuration of the form, ano ra nga forms, in powder form, in liquid form, no? Relabeling or labeling of the container, except that such terms do not include preparation, compounding, packaging, or labeling of a drug or other substances by a duly authorized practitioner as an incident to his or her administration or dispensation of such drug or substance in the course of his or her professional practice, including research, teaching, and chemical analysis of dangerous drugs. So kung ang purpose mo is for teaching, research, chemical analysis, or for example, you're a doctor and you need to dispense medical marijuana, so you have to purify marijuana into a medical form para nga i-dispense sa mga patient, exempted na riya. Okay? Then, what is cannabis? Cannabis is commonly known as marijuana or Indian hemp or by any other name. No? Lain-lain karangaran na may damo, may basta lain-lain kara ang ngaran ng ginagamit. Pero there are many varieties. Example, cannabis americana, hashish, bang, guasa, choros, ganjab, no? Tananja, class and character of marijuana. Okay? Whether it is dried, fresh, flowering, fruiting, or any part or portion thereof. Okay? Methylnidioxymethamphetamine or MDMA, or commonly known as ecstasy. This refers to the drug having such chemical composition, including any of its isomers or derivatives. Methamphetamine hydrochloride, or commonly known as shabu or ice or meth, this refers to the drug having such chemical composition. Opium, on the other hand, is the coagulated juice of the opium poppy. Okay? It embraces every kind, class, and character of opium, whether crude or prepared, in ashes or refuse of the same, narcotic preparation, whether it is in morphine or alkaloid opium. Okay? Basta nga ingredient niya opium poppy. So we call that opium. Okay? So an opium poppy refers to the part of the plant. It includes the seeds, the straw, the branches, the leaves, or any part thereof. Pwedeng a flower, whether derived for floral, decorative, and culinary purposes. So the opium is derived from opium poppy. The opium poppy is the plant. Okay? How about PDEA? It refers to the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency. A person is any entity, a natural or juridical. Magabala ko natural is a natural person. Juridical means a hypothetical person like companies, corporations, associations. So they include corporations, partnerships, trust or estate, a joint stock company, association, a syndicate, a joint venture or other unincorporated organization or group capable of acquiring rights or entering into an obligation. That is a person. So a person can either be a natural or a juridical person. What do we mean by planting of evidence? It is a willful act by any person of maliciously and surreptitiously inserting, placing, adding, or attaching directly or indirectly through any overt or covert act, whatever quantity of any dangerous drug and or controlled precursor and essential chemical into the person, the house, or the effects in the immediate vicinity of an innocent individual, for the purpose of implicating, incriminating, or imputing the commission of any violation of this act. So meaning, wara ti ebidensya, kundi ginplant lang ang ebidensya. No? Ginhangad kag i-plant para ma-implicate ang person, ang individual. Now, who is a practitioner? It is a person who is either a licensed physician, a dentist, a chemist, a medical technologist, a nurse, a midwife, a veterinarian, or a pharmacist. Okay? Meaning a professional. What is a protector or a cuddler? Is any person who knowingly and willfully consents to the unlawful act provided for in this act and uses his or her influence, power, or position in shielding, harboring, screening, or facilitating the escape of any person he or she knows and has reasonable grounds to believe on or suspects and has violated the provision of this act. Meaning, gintago mo, ginbuligan mo nga maka-escape, ang isa ka person nga suspect nga nag-violate ka provision of this act. So you are a cuddler or a protector. A pusher is any person who sells, trades, administers, dispenses, delivers, or gives away to another on any terms whatsoever, or distributes, dispatches in transit, or transports dangerous drugs, or who acts as a broker in any such transaction in violation of this act. So, ang pusher, amura ang bugaw, amurang bugaw, kay ginabugawan na ang iban para magamit kang drugs. So what is a school? A school is any educational institution. It can be private or public. And it has defined levels, depending kung elementary, high school, college, postgraduate. Okay? What is a screening test? It is a rapid test performed to establish potential or presumptive positive result for the use of drugs. What do you mean by sell? Sell is any act of giving away any dangerous drug and or controlled precursor, an essential chemical, whether for money or other consideration. What do you mean by other consideration? For sex, for favor. So hindi lang for money yan. Pwede man nga nag-sell ikaw for other consideration, no? Usually kung hindi money, sex and favor or position. Trading are transactions involving the illegal trafficking of dangerous drugs and or controlled precursors. And the use of other electronic devices. So they are not limited to, these are examples, text messages, email, mobile or landline, two-way radios, internet, instant messengers, chat room, or acting as broker, whether for money or other consideration, that is trading. So, anong kinalain kang selling kag trading? Ang selling, usually, nagabaligya ka sa person, a direct end user. Sa trading tana, bakanti end user ang nagagamit, kundi actually, nagabaligya ikaw for profit. No? Pareho nga for consideration. Pero si trading, massive ang exchange of goods. So use is the act of injecting intravenously or extramuscularly of consuming by chewing, smoking, sniffing, eating, swallowing, drinking. Otherwise, introducing into the physiological system of the body any of the dangerous drugs. So that is use. So what are the acts that are unlawful and what are the penalties? Number 1, importation of dangerous drugs and or controlled precursor and essential chemicals. The penalty is life imprisonment to death and the fine ranging from 500,000 pesos to 10 million pesos. Okay? Unless authorized by law. Okay? Next. The penalty of imprisonment ranging from 12 years and 1 day to 20 years and a fine ranging from 100,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos for those who import controlled precursor and essential chemicals. Kainata na, kung mag-import ka or bring into the Philippines. Tiyata na, kung ang gina-import mo, controlled precursor and essential chemical but not the drugs itself. Okay? The penalty of 12 years and 1 day to 20 years of imprisonment and a fine ranging from 100,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who acts as a protector or cuddler of any violator of the provisions under this section. Okay? Next, what else is penalized? The sale, the trading, administration, dispensation, delivery, distribution, and transportation of dangerous drugs and or controlled precursors and essential chemicals. It has a penalty, sale ra, kay natara to ang ginistoryan, importation. Okay? Sale, trading, administration, dispensation, delivery, distribution, and transportation of dangerous drugs act and or controlled precursor and essential chemicals. The penalty of life imprisonment to death and a fine ranging from 500,000 pesos to 10 million pesos. Okay? So I repeat, kung mag-import ka, meaning mag-import halin ka sa ibang nga country, pasidlin mo sa Pilipinas. Okay, that's importation. Pero kung sale, trading, administration, dispensation, delivery, distribution, and transportation, meaning ang drug rigyaran sa Philippines. Both may penalty. A penalty of imprisonment ranging from 12 years and 1 day to 20 years. And a fine ranging from 100,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos shall be imposed on any person who, unless authorized by law, shall sell, trade, administer, dispense, deliver, or give away to another, distribute, dispatch in transit, or transport any controlled precursor and essential chemical. So, sa section 5, may darwarigya. Nagbaligya ikaw kang drug mismo or nagbaligya ikaw kang precursor chemical, meaning not the drug itself, but the ingredient nga kinanglan pa sa pagmanufacture kang drug. For drug posers who use minors or mentally incapacitated individuals as runners, couriers, and messengers, or any other capacity directly connected to the dangerous drugs and a controlled precursor and essential chemicals, the maximum penalty shall be imposed in every case. If the victim of the offense is a minor or a mentally incapacitated individual, he or should a dangerous drug and a controlled precursor and essential chemical is involved in any offense therein provided, the proximate cause of death of a victim thereof, the maximum penalty provided under this section shall be imposed. So may maximum penalty. If the victim is a minor or a mentally incapacitated individual. Bakit maximum penalty? Dahil a minor or a mentally incapacitated individual does not have knowledge. He cannot give true consent dahil wala sing ginatawag nga awareness of the act. Okay? So maximum ang penalty should it result to the death of a victim. The maximum penalty under this section shall also be imposed upon any person who organizes, manages, or acts as a financier in any of the illegal activities. Okay? The penalty of 12 years and 1 day to 20 years of imprisonment and a fine ranging from 100,000 to 500,000 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who acts as a protector, cuddler of any violator of the provisions under this section. Now, how about if you maintain a den? Penalty of life imprisonment. Manamo ko den o resort or dive, dyan ka ra ginagamit ka ginabligi ang drugs. No? Kung baga amura ang sari-sari store. Ang grocery store nga nagabligya. 500,000 pesos to 10 million pesos. And imprisonment of 12 years and 1 day to 20 years. Okay? To 500,000 pesos upon any person or group of persons who shall maintain a den, a dive, or a resort where any controlled precursor and essential chemical is used in any form. Should the Dangerous Drugs Act, the dangerous drug, be the proximate death of a person taking the same, in such a den, dyan gid mismo napatay, a dive, a resort, the penalty of death and a fine ranging from 1 million to 15 million shall be imposed on the maintainer, the owner, and or operator. Okay? If such den, dive or resort is owned by a third person, the same property shall be confiscated and is cheated in favor of the government. Meaning, ti barayad, ang amuran nga property, beleen kang gobyerno in favor of the government. Provided that a criminal complaint shall specifically allege that such place is intentionally used in the furtherance of the crime. Provided further that the prosecution shall prove such intent on the part of the owner to use the property for such purpose. And provided finally that the owner shall be included as an accused in the criminal complaint. But ang balon, dapat may complaint kag na-prove yet that the owner is guilty of the crime. No? Hindi pa man pagbutingan ang property na kung wala pa ma-adjudge as guilty. No? So dapat may criminal case anay nga gin-file kag na-prove kag may judgment antes nga ibulian ang nga propiedad. If you are a person who organizes, manages, or acts as a financier, you will also be penalized. Maximum penalty under this section shall be imposed upon those who act as financier. So hindi lang kuon nga tag-iya kang resort, den or resort ang i-penalize, including ang financier. No? Ang nag-provide kang finance. Penalty of 12 years and 1 day to 20 years of imprisonment and a fine ranging from 100,000 to 500,000 shall be imposed upon any person who acts as a protector or cuddler of any violator under this section. So kada section, iba-iba ang penalty. Depende kung ano ang role mo. No? Kung protector or cuddler ikaw, kang nagabaligya or pusher, iba ang penalty, kaysa kung protector or cuddler ikaw, kang owner kang den or resort. O kung kang financier. So, iba ang fine. No? That's why kada section may separate nga penalty. Sino pa? Employees and visitors of the den, dive or resort is given 12 years and 1 day to 20 years. Imprisonment and a fine ranging from 100,000 to 500,000. Sinuran, employee of a den who is aware of the nature of such place. Any person not being included in the provisions of the next preceding paragraph, o nagbisita ka lang, you are still subject to penalty. Mura nga, kung manan mo nga daw hindi nami ang lugar, hindi ka mag-aradto dyan. Okay? Section 8, manufacture. Andito nga, ito biti mo sa drug den, kung way katiplano, magbakal to ka drugs, o kung maggamit. Hindi bla? Okay. Manufacture of dangerous drugs and uncontrolled precursor, an essential chemical. Ang penalty is life imprisonment to death and a fine ranging from 500,000 pesos to 10 million pesos. How about the person who authorizes the manufacture? So ang manufacturer, iba man ang penalty na sa the one who authorized by law for the one who, unless authorized, no, who manufactured the drug, an essential chemical. Okay, so for the manufacturer, penalty of life imprisonment to death and a fine ranging from 500,000 pesos to 10 million pesos who engage in manufacture. Okay, the dangerous drug. Ang jasi dalam nga ria, next paragraph, 1 day to 20 years and fine ranging from 100,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos if you manufacture the controlled precursor or essential chemical. So bali si babaw, finished product rata nga drugs. Ang sa idalam, ang gina-manufacture mo, amo ang ingredient nga para sa pag-manufacture pa lang. Okay? That's the distinction there. So whether ingredient or ang finished product ng manufacture no, pariho nga may penalty. Iba-iba lang ang level of penalty. If the manufacturing process was conducted in the presence or with the help of minors, or any phase or manufacturing is established or undertaken within 100 meters of a residential, a business, a school, or a church premises, bawal yan. Clandestine laboratory was secured or protected with bobby traps. Panigurado ka, may CCTV ang laboratory. Nakasecure siya. May gwardya. Aba, dugang ang penalty. Mas dugang ang penalty kung rapid sa eskwelahan, rapid sa simbahan, ang pagmanufacture, rapid sa residential or business area. Kay ang realidad gidman, sa rapid gidman sa amo dyan mga lugar, ginamanufacture para hapos ang pag-distribute sa pagbaligya kay raka tawo. Si ang negosyo bay ginabutang gid sa raka tawo. Or any clandestine laboratory was concealed with legitimate business operations. Halimbawa, ang business mo, grocery. Pero sa likod ka grocery, may nagabaligya kang shabu. O kung ang business mo, nagabuhat ka ice. Pero sa likod kang ice, may secret laboratory. May duga nga penalty. Or may employment of a practitioner, a chemical engineer, a public official, or a foreigner. Oy, dugang. So the maximum penalty provided for under this section shall be imposed upon any person who organizes, manages, or acts as a financier of any of the illegal activities prescribed in this section. So ang last nga section, manufacturing. Okay? So we have different levels of penalties. If you are a cuddler or a protector of a violator, ang imuta na penalty 12 years and 1 day to 20 years of imprisonment and a fine ranging from 100 pesos to 500,000 pesos. So depende kung ano ang act nga gincommit mo, pag kung ano ang role mo, dyan man nakabase ang imo penalty nga imprisonment or fine or both. Okay? Section 9, illegal chemical diversion of controlled precursor and essential chemical. Hambal ko ano kay natong diversion? Gingamit mo ang chemical, hindi sana intended purpose. No? Pero gingamit mo sa pag-manufacture kang drugs. So the penalty of imprisonment ranging from 12 years and 1 day to 20 years and a fine ranging from 100,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos to any person who shall illegally divert any controlled precursor and essential chemical. So tanan nga mga essential chemical or precursor chemical, mga ingredient, these are all regulated substances. Hindi ka pwede nga magbakal sobra sa kinanglanan mo. In fact, gina-report mo, pira binakal mo, sabihin mo gingamit, how much ang nagamit, tanan ran, they are regulated. Pag sumubra ka dyan, pwede ka rin nga illegal chemical diversion. Section 10, manufacture or delivery of equipment, instrument, apparatus, and other paraphernalia. May penalty din. So, baligya ikaw kang flask. Okay? Basta mga flask, mga basta tanan nga gamit nga kinanglan sa pagmanufacture, tanan nga equipment or instrument, ikaw ang nagmanufacture, kag nag-deliver, kag pagkatapos na-prove nga dyan kanimo halin, part ikaw kang penalty. No? Kay nga tanan nga mga equipment, kag instrument, check man dya kung diin nagaadto kag sino nagbakal. No? Kasi man-anra natin kung diin di ama adto kag kung diin ri agamitin. No? These are all regulated. So hindi lang ang chemical ang gina-regulate, but also ang apparatuses and equipments. How about if you possess dangerous drugs act? Ang penalty depende kung ano ang degree of purity of the drug, kag kung daw ano karake ang drug. So 10 grams or more of opium, 10 grams or more of morphine, 10 grams or more, basta 10 grams lang na, or 50 grams of methamphetamine or shabu, 10 grams of marijuana resin or marijuana resin oil, 500 grams or more of marijuana, raw marijuana. Ang penalty is, for possession is, ranging from imprisonment, life imprisonment to death, and a fine ranging from 500,000 pesos to 10 million pesos. Okay, 10 grams of ecstasy, LSD, basta nakaspecify dyan. Okay, less dangerous quantities. How about magsubra ikaw sa 10 grams but less than 50 grams? Masaka man ang penalty. Life imprisonment and a fine ranging from 400,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos. Okay? Oh, 10 grams of opium. So basta naka-specify lang. How about less than 5 grams of opium, morphine, cocaine hydrochloride, 12 years and 1 day to 20 years, and a fine ranging from 300,000 to 400,000 pesos. So, ang penalty o kang possession, depende kung how much ang imo nga na possess. How much ang nadakpan kanimo. Section 12. Possession of equipment, instrument, apparatus, and other paraphernalia is also punishable by law. Okay? Penalty of imprisonment ranging from 6 months and 1 day to 4 years, and a fine ranging from 10,000 pesos to 50,000 pesos. So, mas taas ang penalty kung nagapossess ikaw ka dangerous drugs mismo kaysa kung nadakpan ikaw nga nagapossess kang instrument or equipment or apparatus. Possession of dangerous drugs during parties, social gatherings, or meetings. May maximum penalty ikaw dyan, regardless of the quantity and purity of the dangerous drugs. Possession of equipment, instrument, apparatus, and other paraphernalia for dangerous drugs during parties, social gatherings, or meetings. Maximum penalty din. Kasi if you are in a party, kag may nadakpan nga may drugs dyan, kag may instrument ka dyan or paraphernalia, laban-laban, gingamit mo. Okay? If you are apprehended or arrested to be positive for any dangerous drugs, kinanglan, confirmatory test, you shall be imposed a penalty of a minimum of 6 months rehabilitation in a government center subject to the provisions of Article 8 of this Act. Ay, ang law nagakuon, rehabilitation. However, if apprehended using any dangerous drug for the second time, may penalty rin nga imprisonment ranging from 6 years and 1 day to 12 years and a fine ranging from 50,000 pesos to 200 pesos. Okay? So, if you are positive for drug use, may penalty. If you cultivate or culture plants classified as dangerous drugs, may penalty man nga life imprisonment to death and a fine ranging from 500,000 pesos to 10,000 pesos. Okay? You know, the law says, kung hindi ka ma-prove nga guilty, you are considered innocent. No? But under the policy of this government, tokhang. That is why, kung pwede pa lang makakita ka mo ka kwarta, nga hindi magbaligya ka drugs, no bayran. Kag kung wala ka ikaw dyan naggamit, hindi rin mag-umpisa. Kung nagagamit ka, untapid. Okay? So, cultivation, culture, handling, experimentation, and disposal of such plants and materials. No? May penalty din. Kag ang land or greenhouses sa diin ang amura nga tanom naka-cultivate or cultured shall be confiscated and is cheated in favor of the state unless the owner can prove lack of knowledge of such cultivation or culture despite the exercise of due diligence on his or her part. Kung owner ikaw, dapat gina-check mo ba imo property? Araw-araw kung ikaw ay takang kamaan, kung ikaw owner, di ba, dapat gina-check mo ano to property mo, ginagamit. Ibaw, timukmaan ko anong tanom da. We have also a penalty for financier. Okay? And then, maintenance and keeping of original records of transactions on dangerous drugs and controlled precursor and essential chemical. So, hindi lang ang pagbaligya, pag-manufacture, pag-cuddle ka manufacturer or user, ang may penalty, ang nagpag-transport, ha? Kundi nga ang pag-keep kang original records of transaction on dangerous drugs and controlled precursor or ingredient. May penalty din. Ano ang penalty? 1 year and 1 day to 6 years and a fine ranging from 10,000 pesos to 50,000 pesos. Batambalan, kung wara ti mo nagabaligya ka drugs, andit nga dyan kanimo ang mga record, andit dyan kanimo ang mga notebook, kung sino nagbakal, sino nagbaligya, may notebook ka dyan, nadakpan, o kung may resibo ikaw, may accounting book, nga, may accounting records ka dyan kung sino gin-distributan. That in itself is punishable by law. Now, Section 18. This refers to practitioners, doctors, dentists, medical technicians, basta mga practitioner, may penalty kung unnecessary prescription of dangerous drugs. Meaning, you are not practicing your profession diligently kung nag-prescribe ikaw nga hindi necessary. If you remember, paano napatay si Michael Jackson? Ha? Because ginaresitahan si Michael Jackson kang drugs, kang ana physician. Si physician gid mismo ang nagabakal kag itugro kay Michael Jackson. Ay napatay si Michael Jackson kang overdose. So physician goes to jail. Okay? That is what we call malpractice of your profession. Because hindi kinahanglanan ang prescription andit gin-prescribe mo. O kung kinahanglanan ang prescription, pero sobra ka what is required. That is also malpractice. So, unlawful prescription, Section 19. Okay. Section 20, confiscation and forfeiture of the proceeds or instruments of the unlawful act. So, ang proceeds, ang income, dason ang drugs, i-confiscate, ang instrument or paraphernalia, including the properties or proceeds derived from illegal trafficking of dangerous drugs and or precursors and essential chemicals, gina-forfeiture, kag gina-confiscate, kag by court order, they have to be destroyed. Okay? So after conviction, the court shall immediately schedule a hearing for the confiscation and forfeiture of all the proceeds of the offense and all the assets and properties of the accused, either owned or held by him or in the name of some other persons, if the same shall be found to be manifestly out of proportion to his or her unlawful income. Meaning, ang lifestyle mo, kag ang ginaposes mo nga propiedad, kag kwarta, sobra kaysa imo nga income. Ha? Suspect ran that you are involved in drug trafficking. In fact, amura ang red flag nga isa. Okay? So I think custody, disposition of confiscated, seized, and or surrendered dangerous drugs, plant sources of dangerous drugs, controlled precursors, and essential chemicals, instruments, paraphernalia, and or laboratory equipment. Okay? Who will have the custody? The PIDEA shall take charge and have custody of all dangerous drugs, plant sources, no? Laboratory equipment for proper disposition in the following manner. So, paano ginadispose ang dangerous drugs and other paraphernalia and the proceeds thereof? After seizure and confiscation, physical inventory and photograph the same in the presence of the accused or the persons whom such items were confiscated and or seized and his or her representative or counsel. Dapat may representative from the media, the Department of Justice, and any elected public official, pwede barangay kapitan, who shall be required to sign the copies of the inventory and be given a copy thereof. So, once nga na-seize and na-confiscate ang drugs or the proceeds thereof, dapat may inventaryo. Sino ang present, ang confiscating team, ang ang accused person or his or her representative, media, and the representative from the Department of Justice, so meaning my court, and any elected public official. Kag, dapat masign sanda sa copy kang inventaryo. Within 24 hours, upon confiscation, seizure of dangerous drugs, plant sources of dangerous drugs, controlled precursors and essential chemicals, as well as instruments or paraphernalia, shall be submitted to the PIDEA Forensic Laboratory for a qualitative and quantitative examination. So, dyan sa qualitative, mamanaan kung pira ka percent ang purity ka drugs, kag kung ano ang quantity ag karakaan. So, pira ka grams, pira ka kilogram, no? I-analyze rin. Then, the forensic laboratory shall issue a certification of the results. And the forensic technician shall be under oath by the forensic laboratory examiner to be issued within 24 hours after receipt of the subject items. Provided, however, nga kung hindi pa matapos ang completion ka testing within the time frame, a partial laboratory examination shall be provisionally issued stating the quantities of the drugs still to be examined. So, pwede nga maka-issue ka partial certificate kang quantity, kang quality of the drugs nga na-examine, kag naka-state dyan, pira pa ang drugs nga wara ma-examine. Okay? Kung hindi matapos within 24 hours. After the filing of the criminal case, the court shall within 72 hours conduct an ocular inspection of the confiscated, seized, and surrendered dangerous drugs, plant sources, and controlled precursor and essential chemicals, including the instruments and the paraphernalia or laboratory equipment. And within 24 hours, proceed with the destruction or burning of the same. So, i-destroy or i-burn ang among drugs or precursor chemicals or paraphernalia in the presence of the accused, his or her representative or counsel, representative from the media, and the Department of Justice, or civil society groups, and any elected public official. So, ang punto lang, pagbuol mo, i-inventaryohon, may witness. Pagsunog, dapat may witness. Hindi nga declare mo, destroy, pero wala ti witnesses. And the PIDEA shall issue a sworn certification to the fact of the destruction or burning of the subject items. And The certification shall be submitted to the court having jurisdiction over the case. Okay? So, the offender or his or her representative or counsel shall be allowed to personally observe all of the above proceedings and shall not constitute an admission of guilt. So, it is a presumption nga ma-attend siya, pero it is not presumed nga guilty siya kung may gin-destroy or ginsunog dyan. No? In case the offender or accused refuses or fails to appoint a representative after due notice in writing within 72 hours before the actual burning of the evidence, the Secretary of Justice shall appoint a member of the Public Attorney's Office to represent the former. So, the Secretary of Justice will appoint a member of the PAW, okay, to represent the accused. After promulgation and judgment in the criminal case, wherein the representative samples was presented as evidence in court, the trial prosecutor shall inform the PIDEA of the final termination of the case and shall request the court for leave to turn over the said representative or samples to the PIDEA for proper disposition and destruction within 24 hours from receipt the same. Sorry. Okay. Ano dyan ang grant of compensation, reward, and award? Any person providing information to law enforcers participating in the operation which result in the successful confiscation, seizure, or surrender of the dangerous drugs, plant sources of dangerous drugs and precursor, and essential chemicals shall be recommended for compensation, reward, and award. Plea bargaining provision, any person charged under the provision of this act, regardless of the imposable penalty, shall not be allowed to avail of the provision on plea bargaining. Okay? The provision of the Dangerous Drugs Act, law for drug traffickers and pushers, are not applicable. So any person convicted for drug trafficking or pushing under this act, regardless of the penalty imposed by the court, cannot avail of the privilege granted by the probation law or Presidential Decree 968. Mananyo rano nga probation, kung first time offender ka, hindi ka lang pagprisuhon, but you will serve your sentence outside. Kung less than 6 months ang imo penalty. Pero pamatyag ko, drug mo ang penalty sa drug trafficker and pusher, so hindi applicable ang probation law. Hindi man applicable ang PD 968, no? Erang tawan bala sandakang reprieve or ibuhinan ang andang penalty, hindi sanda applicable kananda. So, in the commission of a crime, may ginatawag kita aggravating and mitigating circumstances. Ano diyang aggravating? These are aggravating circumstances. These are circumstances sa diin nagadugang kag nagabugat ang penalty. Aggravating ran. Pero kung circumstances sa diin nagamagaan ang penalty, panawag natin karan mitigating circumstances. Okay? So, ang aggravating circumstances in the commission of a crime by an offender and the application of penalty provided in the revised penal code shall be applicable. So kung may mga aggravating circumstances, kag magdugang ang penalty, applicable gid kung ano ang nakasaad dyan sa revised penal code. What do you mean by attempt or conspiracy? These are attempts to commit the following: importation of dangerous drug and or controlled precursor and essential chemicals, sale, trading, administration, dispensation, delivery, transportation and or controlled precursor, maintenance of a den, dive or resort, manufacture of any dangerous drugs and or controlled precursor and essential chemical, and cultivation or culture of plants which are sources of dangerous drugs. How about if the accused is a public officer or employee for misappropriation or misapplication or failure to account for the confiscated is a police officer or plant sources or paraphernalia, there is penalty of life imprisonment to death and a fine ranging from 500,000 pesos to 10 million pesos. Batabalan, hindi lang ang trafficker or financier, cuddler, user, ukon manufacturer, or pusher ang may penalty. If you are a public officer and you are specified under the law to do your act, but you did not do it because you failed to account for the dangerous seized or surrendered drugs and paraphernalia, that is also criminally punishable by law. Any elective local or national official found to have benefited from the proceeds of the trafficking of dangerous drugs as prescribed in this act, or have received any financial or material contributions or donations from natural or juridical persons found guilty of trafficking dangerous drugs as prescribed in this act shall be removed from office and perpetually disqualified from holding any elective or appointed position. Magamar ko perpetually, until the end of your life, hindi siya maka-occupy kang elective or appointed position in the government. Qualification, filean man ka criminal case ang government official and employees who violated the provisions of this act when they are required to do their act, to do their duty under the as part of being an employee of the government. Why dagini mo may criminal liability sanda luwas sa perpetual disqualification. Kung nagplant man ikaw ka evidence, may criminal liability man. They shall suffer the penalty of death. Criminal liability for officers of partnerships, corporations, associations, or other juridical entities. In case the violation of this act is committed by a partnership, a corporation or association, or any juridical entity. Tandaan, ang partnership, ang corporation, ang association, this is a hypothetical person. This is not a real person. So, ano ang matabo? The partner, president, director, manager, trustee, state administrator, or officer who consents to or knowingly tolerates such violation shall also be held criminally liable as principal. Buat tambalan, kung principal ang pagtratar ka na, the same ang penalty na kaysa the one who is accused. Kasi nag-consent siya. Okay? If the offender is an alien, there is additional penalty. Okay? Persons violating any regulation issued by the PDEA, they have also special additional liabilities. Immunity from prosecution and punishment, notwithstanding the provisions of Section 17, Rule 119 of the Revised Rules of Criminal Procedures, and the provisions of RA 6981 or the Witness Protection, Security, and Benefit Act of 1991, any person who has violated Section 7, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 19, and Article 2 of this Act, who voluntarily gives information about any violations of Sections 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 13, and 16. Article 2 of this Act, as well as any violation of the offenses mentioned, and if committed by a drug syndicate or any information leading to the whereabouts, identities, and arrest of all of any of the members thereof, and who willingly testifies against such person as described above, shall be exempted from prosecution or punishment for the offense with reference to his or her information of testimony. So if you act as a witness and you give information or testimony, may ginatawag kita nga immunity from prosecution and punishment. So may immunity. Basta willingly ikaw ang nag-testify, they are exempted from prosecution or punishment for the offense with reference only to his or her information of testimony given, and may plead or prove the giving of such information and testimony in bar of such prosecution. So ano requirement para may immunity ikaw sa penalty kag liability? Matugro ikaw ka information or testimony, ma-witness ikaw. Number 1, the information and testimony are necessary for the conviction of the persons described above. Meaning material witness ikaw. Such information and testimony are not yet in the possession of the state. Ura pakmaan ng state, ikaw lang ginakamaan. Such information and testimony can be corroborated on its material points. The informant or witness has not been previously convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude, except when there is no other direct evidence available. So kung nakaagi ikaw akusar ka perjure, pag binotig, laban-laban, hindi ka makonsider nga nami nga informant or witness. Unless, wara rigid ti other direct evidence. The informant or witness shall strictly and faithfully comply without delay any condition or undertaking reduced into writing, dapat it should be written, lawfully imposed by the state as further consideration for the grant of immunity. So it should be in writing, kag without delay. that this immunity may be enjoyed by such informant or witness who does not appear to be the most guilty for the offense with reference to his or her information or testimony. Meaning, pwede ikaw maka-act as witness if you are the least guilty. Pero kung ikaw ang pinaka-most guilty, di man pwede nga ikaw witness to, ito mo iba nga lesser ang andagani nga penalty. Provided finally there is no direct evidence available for the state except for the information and testimony of the said informant or witness. Meaning, wala ron ti iban nga witnesses, ikaw lang gid. Saan o ma-terminate ang grant of immunity? If it has been proven that the testimony is false, malicious, or made only for the purpose of harassing, molesting, or anyway prejudicing the person described, whom such information or testimony is directed against, pwede ma-terminate ang grant of immunity. Okay? Immunity of the witness itself. Okay? So, may mga accessory penalties. Naghambal kita accessory penalties, dugang ran nga penalty. So, ano ang mga requirement? For drug users, may ginatawag nga drug testing. Okay? So, may mga requirements dyan. Sino ang subjected to undergo drug testing? Ang applicants for driver's license, applicants for firearm license, and permit to carry firearms outside of residence, students of secondary and tertiary schools, may ginatawag kita nga test and record requirement. Hindi required, hindi mandatory ang testing. Kasi ang testing is random. Magambag ko random kung sino lang ang i-identify. And the testing expenses shall be borne by the government. Sino pagid ang required nga mag-undergo ka drug test? Officers and employees of public and private offices. Random din yan. Hindi mandatory for all. Officers and members of the military, the police, and other law enforcement agencies, they are required to undergo annual mandatory drug tests. All persons charged before the officer's office criminal offenses having an imposable penalty of imprisonment of not less than 6 years and 1 day are required to undergo mandatory drug tests. All candidates for public office, whether appointive or elective, both in the national or local government, shall undergo mandatory drug test. Okay? May penalty man for persons or accredited to give drug test. Kung mag-issue sa naka-false or fraudulent drug test result, they are a penalty also of 6 years and 1 day to 12 years and a fine ranging from 100,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos. So, ang tanan nga mga drug testing, kinanglan nga reliable nga nga drug test. Ang tanan nga apprehended or arrested offenders for violating the provision of this act shall be subjected to screening, laboratory examinations, or tests within 24 hours. Offenders under this act required to undergo laboratory drug test. Okay? Sino ang may authority or power to accredit drug testing centers and physicians? The DOH. Every pharmacist dealing in dangerous drugs or controlled precursors shall maintain and keep an original record of sales, purchases, acquisitions, and deliveries of dangerous drugs, indicating therein the following information. Hambal ko ba'y kaina? Hapos na sa government nga i-track kung may delivery kang precursor chemical nga gin-divert. Kasi mamanaan mo kung para sa diin, matansyan da how much, pira ka gram ang kinanglan, pira ang gin-deliver, pira ang finished product. So, tapos mag-compute kung tutuod gid kag sinsiro ang gobyerno, you can keep track of everything. Ano ang requirement nga gina-keep track kang mga pharmacist and those handling drugs, whether the actual drugs or precursor chemicals, dapat license number, address of the name, and license of the manufacturer, importer, or wholesaler from whom the dangerous drugs have been purchased. Halimbawa, precursor chemical, diin ra nga kumpanya gin-import para sa diin. Quantity and name of the dangerous drugs purchased, the date of acquisition or purchase, address and community tax certificate of the buyer, serial number of the prescription and name of the physician, dentist, veterinarian, or hold and the date of sale or delivery. Hindi pwede nga wala ka ti records pareho taton ka formally kara din mo gin bakal o nakmaan. How much ang bakal o isa nakmaan? Hindi ta pwede ran. If you are dealing with dangerous drugs, para hindi ka maakusaran kang diversion, dapat complete ang records. Covering at least 6 months. Duly signed by the pharmacist or owner of the drugstore or chemical establishment and forwarded to the PDEA within 15 days following the last day of June and December of its year. So last day of June and last day of December, meaning mid-year and end of the year. And a copy shall be furnished to the city or municipal health officer concerned. Okay? So dapat kompleto ang record. So, paano ma-implement siya ang act? Dapat may involvement of the family, the student council, and campus organizations. Dapat, gina-encourage gid ang school curriculum will teach about the dangerous drugs and the effect of dangerous drugs and to educate you on the Dangerous Drugs Act law itself. The heads and supervisors and teachers of the school, and dapat may mga special drug education center who will also assist the PDEA in the dissemination of information in the implementation of this law. Okay? Publication and distribution of materials on dangerous drugs shall also be the duty of DepEd, the CHED, and TESDA. Kasi may mga students si CHED, si DepEd, kag si TESDA. Dapat, Article 5, promotion of a national drug-free workplace program with the participation of private and labor sectors and the Department of Labor and Education. Labor and Employment, rather. So it is not the duty only of the government to implement this law, pero gina-encourage both private and public agencies and organizations, the labor sectors, and also local government units. No? They are encouraged to implement this act. May program kita under Article 8, Program for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Drug Dependents. So drug dependence are encouraged to undergo voluntary submission to confinement, treatment, and rehabilitation. May mga ginatawag kita nga private rehabilitation centers, mahal-mahal. Kanan mo, mabayad ka pa kang board and lodging, and at the same time, ang medication and all the therapies, mahal di Amuran nga, kung harus-harus man lang ka mo makakaon, harus-harus man lang ka mo makabakal gani kadapli, harus-harus kita maka-eskwela, maluoy ka mo sa ginikanan nyo, hindi ra ka mo maggamit ka drugs, kay laban-laban, hindi sa naka-afford si nanay, kag si tatay, kag si pamilya, baligya sa natanan kakalupaan, katanan nga kasapatan, mauntat ang mga kabugtuan ka eskwela para mapa-rehabilitate ikaw, ay mahal ang rehabilitation. May ginatawag kita nga government rehabilitation center. But mind you, rigya sa Western Visayas, taragid lang. Kung drug addict, hindi rasanda ma-absorb kang atin nga mga government rehabilitation centers. Abi mo, mahal. Hindi rin, magpasaga-saga. Okay, Section 58, there are filing of charges against a drug dependent who is not rehabilitated under the voluntary submission program. So, dapat voluntarily submit ka for rehabilitation. Ay kung hindi, filean ikaw kang kaso. No? Okay? Kadya, kay hindi kasarang ang gobyerno kang isidlan sa rehabilitation center ang tanan-tanan nga mga drug addict, medyo kinatawag kita nga community drug rehabilitation. Bali, periodic lang go ka mo sa DO. Kung bukan pati seryoso ang drug addiction nyo, pero kung seryoso ragid, inanglanggit sa mga centers gid ka mo masilit. And I tell you, it's very, very expensive. Bisan ang government owned, may i-shoulder gid ang ginikanan nyo nga expenses. What happens kung nag-escape ikaw sa confinement kag rehabilitation under the voluntary submission program? Natural. I-recommit ikaw. Okay? Sino ang may obligasyon? Your parent, your spouse, your guardian, or your relative within the 4th degree of consanguinity or affinity within 1 week therefrom isurrender da ikaw for recommitment. Ay kung hindi di ka mo surrender, sanda ang tinahan. No? However, records under the voluntary submission program are confidential. Okay? After you have been cured, ginatago ang records confidential so you can start a new life. Okay? So, ang first-time offender, Section 66, ginasuspend anay ang sentence. Suspend, meaning wala gina-implement ang sentence. If the accused is over 15 years of age at the time of the commission of the offense, but not more than 18 years of age. So, pwede i-suspend ang sentence. Okay? Bukan ikaw ti habitual offender, meaning wala ka ti prior conviction for violating the provision of this act. Because, kung nakaagi rin ikaw nga na-convict, pagkatapos na-convict ka ulit, hindi rin masuspend ang sentensya mo kay ikaw ay habitual offender. Okay? Pero, okay. So, if the accused first-time minor offender under a suspended sentence complies with the applicable rules and regulations of the board, including confinement in a center, the court, upon a favorable recommendation of the board for the final discharge of the accused, shall discharge the accused and dismiss all proceedings. So, bisan nga na-failan ka kaso, kung first time kag minor offender ikaw, pwede ma-discharge ang kag ma-dismiss ang proceedings against you. Okay? Provided kung you are not a habitual offender, meaning hindi second time. Ang pribileyo para lang sa first time offender. Okay? I will post the whole of this act in your NSTP module. Okay? So, i-ano ko dyan, i-post ko ang lecture and at the same time, the soft copy. Pwede nyo ilang taon ang link kag ma-open nyo because I think ang pinaka-important lang gin-discuss porong kaninyo. Ang mga implementing rules and regulations para diranta na sa mga government officials, no? And para sa Department of Justice. Wala rin pinyo. Appropriations, management of funds, and annual report, wala rin tanara naga-cover kaninyo. Okay? So, good luck. I hope you will read the whole of this law and listen to the initial explanations. Thank you very much. Matiang mo pag-itap mo to, ay may lalako.